was born in England, and you can find me on Twitter as China Bazaar, which is ChinaBazzar. And you will see from my Twitter timeline that I tweet often about the world situation as I see it from my perspective. I've hit the point where I feel the need to speak with my own voice and my own face and speak what I feel is the truth about the constant barrage of anti-China propaganda that is being unleashed unfairly against China. And I think it's time that I said something, and I feel I have to get this off my chest. I worked for a newspaper in England, in Britain, Britain's largest daily circulation newspaper for 6 years. So I do have some knowledge of how the media works. But what I want to talk to you today about is the anti-China barrage that is going on and propaganda. And we used to call it spin. Spin is a term that's not very much used these days, but what it used to mean and what it still does mean is when a media organ, such as a newspaper or a news channel, take a story or take a piece of information and spin it. That is to say, they give it another meaning, or they give it a meaning that they wish you to perceive. They wish to change your thinking about a particular situation. And these people are called spin doctors. And spin doctors exist today just as much as they ever have. So we're going to talk about propaganda, and certainly about anti-China propaganda, spin. Now, the Western media, the MSM as they're known, are owned by just a handful of people. A handful of corporations own all of the Western media. Now, this doesn't give much hope for having a very broad perspective on things, because the media being owned are just saying what they are told to say. The journalists that used to be in my day don't exist anymore. There are very few left. John Pilger is one. Noam Chomsky is a great writer. Andrei Volchek has just recently died in Istanbul, and he again was a great reporter, a great journalist who told the truth. He went to the countries that he was reporting about, and we'll talk about him later. But right now, let's talk about propaganda and spin and anti-China propaganda and where the media gets its stories from. There are two main sources of information that they get these stories from, and we're going to talk about Xinjiang in China and the Uyghur population, or at least some of the Uyghur population. Now, the media's main source of information is a man named Adrian Zenz. Adrian Zenz, whatever you want to call him. He's German, and he's also a religious zealot. That is to say, he has very profound and extreme religious views. And the Western media, particularly the BBC, The Guardian, the New York Times, the Washington Post, The Economist, they all use this man's, I'm going to put this in inverted commas, work. Now, how this began was a while ago, the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, approached Adrian Zenz and asked him to write, to find something that they could use to make China look bad. This is a fact, and this is, I'm quoting Adrian Zenz's own words now. The BBC asked me if I could find something, and I told them no. It's too difficult, it's too hard, there is not enough evidence. This is the words of Adrian Zenz. He said, I can't find this, there's no evidence, it's too difficult. The BBC later approached Adrian Zenz again with a commission. Now, when we're talking about a commission, we're talking about money, which means the BBC are and have paid Adrian Zenz to find something. Adrian Zenz then accepted. So at first he said, no, I can't do this. Later he accepted. And we presume that he was offered a lot more money to find something. So he went away and he found some stuff which he has concocted and made it sound very much like there are terrible things happening in Xinjiang. to Uyghur people. Now, this is patent untruth, and Adrian Zenz has been exposed many times on social media as being somebody who does not speak the whole truth about things, somebody who twists facts, somebody who spins information to make it read in the way that the people who pay him want it to read. Now, another source of information, you can call it, or disinformation, as I would prefer to call it, on the situation in Xinjiang with Uyghur people, or a certain section of Uyghur people, is actually, now you're not going to believe this, but it's actually the media itself. Now I'm going to quote, and we'll show you the clip of this interview with a man named Omar Kanat. Now, Omar Kanat is the president of the World Uyghur Congress. Now, the WUC, the World Uyghur Congress, are very heavily funded by something called the NED, the National Endowment for Democracy. The National Endowment for Democracy is another branch, another arm of the CIA. In their own words, they freely admit that that's what the NED are. They do the work that the CIA used to do completely, but they are just an extension of the CIA, which is to say, they disrupt and they create insurrection and they create chaos in countries that are not entirely bent to the will of the United States administration. This is what they do. It's a fact. It's on record. So the WUC and Omar Kanat are funded by the NED, the CIA. Omar Kanat used to work for something called Radio Free Asia, which was set up as a disinformation and propaganda campaign against mainly China, but it's pro-America, pro-US, pro-US interests, and it is funded again by the CIA and the NED. Omar Kanat worked for Radio Free Asia. Now he's the president of the World Uyghur Congress. Now, an investigative journalist who works for Grey Zone, whose name is Max Blumenthal, actually interviewed Omar Kanat and asked him about this figure of 1 million people, because this is the figure that gets repeated through the media. 1 million people in concentration camps. 1 million people, up to 1 million people, over 1 million people, 3 million people. The figures change because none of them are true. And when Max Blumenthal asked Omar Kanat where this figure of 1 million people came from, Omar Kanat, president of the World Uyghur Congress, said, we don't know exactly, but from the media. This was the words of Omar Kanat that said, he said, the figure of 1 million comes from the media. So the media are providing their own story. This is what you call spin. This is what you call propaganda. The figure of 1 million is an untruth right from the beginning. They gave themselves their own figure.
I met Omar Kanat, chairman of the World Uyghur Congress, a group funded almost entirely by the NED.
The Chinese authorities, Chinese government put more than 1 million Uyghurs in so-called re-education camp. It is very similar to concentration camps.
And your group, which is sponsored by the NED, is the one that's documented this and supplied the information to the U.S.
Yes, some of the information, of course, not all of it, yeah.
Along with the US-funded Radio Free Asia, where Kanat used to work, his Uyghur Congress is responsible for widely reported claims that as much as 1/10 of the Uyghur Muslim population of the Xinjiang province of China has been placed in re-education camps. The number of Uyghurs said to be housed in those camps varies widely, from 120,000 to 500,000 to 1 million. And the source of this information invariably boils down to US-backed media outfits like Radio Free Asia.
How do you know it's 1 million, the number? That's a very staggering number.
Yeah, staggering number. This number was given to, by some or even some Western media estimates. We don't know exactly how
Western media estimates.